Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy.
He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them asked Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over. The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Like Gavolt. That's all I want to say right now. We're going to get back to Pam Bondi in a few moments, but we have Georgia 14 congressional candidate Shawn Harris with us today. We'll chat with Shawn in just a moment. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So we're going to start off with Iran and the war. We'll circle back to Pam. Let's play this clip from the Big D.
Many Americans have been concerned to see the recent rise in gasoline prices here at home. The short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict. This is yet more proof that Iran can never be trusted with nuclear weapons. They will use them, and they will use them quickly. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done, so it should be easy. And in any event, when this conflict is over, the strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally. Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
So Iran has been so decimated that it shot down a U.S. fighter jet. This is breaking news as we are going to tape right here. And that doesn't sound like the military has been decimated. You know, when you listen to Trump, everything is about the Navy, the Air Force, everything has been destroyed. They have nothing left. It's all lies. That's all it is. Gas prices, they're not up over $4 a gallon because of Iranian terrorist acts in the Strait of Hormuz. They are up because Donald Trump has waged a war of choice against Iran. There was no justification for this war. There was no plan for this war. There was no strategy for winning this war. There is no strategy for exiting this war. There is no strategy for what comes after this war. We've been told since February 29th, which I think is the day after the war started, that we won. Since then, we've been told countless times that mission has been accomplished, that not only has there been regime change, that Iran's military has been destroyed, that their nuclear capabilities have been destroyed, that they've capitulated, that they're begging for a deal. And this morning they shoot down a fighter jet. That doesn't sound like they're begging for anything. How many times has Donald Trump threatened to blow up power plants and power grids if they don't open what he calls the Hormuz Strait? If I hear him say that one more time, I think I'm going to throw a fucking shoe at my television. And I love my TV. Hormuz Strait. Why does everything that guy say either have to be a lie or just something fucking weird? But so every time he made one of those threats, 48 hours, you got 48 hours. What does Taco Boy do? He dials it back. He makes up some lie. Like, he literally looks at his CNBC app and he goes, oh shit, the future's pointing to a bad day on Wall Street today. I better say something positive. Great negotiations with Iran. And then boom, the stock market goes up. Nothing but market manipulation. Look at what's happened over the last week and a half, 2 weeks. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Somebody's making some serious coin in the Trump circle or family. And I hope one day we're going to get to the bottom of that. But this address the other night, what was the point of this? Did you guys watch this thing?
No, I was at a Seder.
What? What kind of Jew are you? You went to a Seder instead of watching Donald Trump's address?
It was a hard choice.
Yeah.
I can imagine. I did watch the address. He was incredibly low energy. His voice, really reminded me of Biden's weak moments where it just faded.
And he slurred his speech.
Yeah. And of course, he made up nonsense from beginning to end, which is a given.
Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't fall asleep during it.
Well, between threatening war crimes and telling us bullshit about how there's no inflation, there was nothing new in that speech. Not a single thing.
I think we're all old enough to remember that when a president gave a primetime national address, it meant something, that there was something substantive that he was going to announce, especially if it had something to do with war. This was just total bullshit. And if they're decimated, why would it take 2 or 3 more weeks to finish the job? What's left? And he keeps making threats. If you don't do this, you don't do that, we're going to bomb you into the stone age. Bomb what? I thought you bombed it all already. How many times can he obliterate a country?
This isn't a small Central American country. This is a
90 million people?
It's huge. It has a ridiculous amount of scientists per capita. This is a strong, proud nation. I don't know what the fuck they're thinking.
We all know they've been preparing for this type of war for decades. Yeah. They're 3 times the size of Iraq. We went into Iraq with 120,000 troops. I think he is going to go into parts of Iran as well as one of the islands. I think that's the plan. And the reason I think that is because he keeps saying he's not going to do it.
I normally would agree. I don't think he's putting soldiers on the ground.
I really hope you're right. I just, based on things that we're seeing, it seems very likely.
Well, one thing we got clearly from his address the other night is that he's at least intending to escalate this, what he calls now a military operation, because they told me I can't say excursion. And why did they tell him he can't say excursion? Because it's like going on a fucking
camping trip
with your kids, okay? He really means incursion. They won't let me say war. Well, you've actually said it about 5,000 fucking times already. So that train has left the station. All we hear is that this thing is won, that it's done, but yet we're going to be there, and he's going to escalate it, and there's going to the Stone Ages and whatever. It's like up, down, the thing about Trump, and this is where I will disagree with you, Matty, and agree with you at the same time, because we know he has no military strategy here. This was all about, Epstein. I got to get people to stop talking about that.
100%.
DHS, airports. I got to stop.
You don't think so?
No, I think Jared is behind this. Jared is a big part of why this happened.
You don't think this is an Epstein distraction?
Not in the least. No, actually, I think he actually thought, because of what happened in Venezuela, that he was going to have the same operation. It'd be a huge success.
Part of it on some level.
And he was convinced. Look, we know that Vance has told Netanyahu he's furious with him because Netanyahu convinced him it would be another Venezuela. This is leaked out on Axios. And so we know that Jared wanted this to happen for both his Israeli friends and his Saudi friends.
I think both things can be true at the same time. This is a quagmire. I mean, look, if you're out there, Republicans, Jen, how many we have now?
24.
Okay. You guys were like, getting your panties in a snit over how Biden exited Afghanistan. But wait till you see how this motherfucker leaves Iran. He doesn't care. He'll be like, I'm bored, I'm done, it's Tuesday, I'm out of here. We won.
And I want Cuba.
And exactly. He'll just look at everyone in this country and lie straight to their faces. You can't trust a sociopath from 1 minute to the next. Do I think this war is going to be over soon? I do. I 100% do, because he's not in it for the altruistic reasons. He's in it for oil. He's in it for Epstein distraction. He's in it for all the wrong, self-serving things. This thing is going to end soon, but it's not going to be pretty.
But it's also Israel. I mean, Israel is occupying southern Lebanon. That's not going to change anytime.
No, Tulsi Gabbard herself said Israel and the United States have two completely different sets of goals here.
Well, that gave them the excuse to occupy a country that was already in shambles. And it's, honestly, it's
Look, I've come a long
horrifying.
way on Israel. I defended Israel for the longest time. I still love the country. I love the people. I love the culture. I love what it's about. And I think it's important to world Jewry to have a strong, respected, and also feared Israel. But it's enough. And these two fuckers together, it's like two sociopaths just trying to figure out how to sacrifice bodies so that they can stay out of jail. That's all it is.
Putting Israel aside for a moment, I don't think this war ends anytime soon, because the reality is, unless Iran literally is defeated, they still have missiles and they still have drones and they will still keep attacking their neighbors. He can't leave.
You think Donald Trump gives a shit about the neighbors?
Yes, he does.
Why?
They're going to want his plane back, number one. And
why does he
they're not
name me a
all
neighbor
of
he
them,
cares about?
They've invested
Including
in his crypto.
Israel.
No, I'm not talking about Israel right now. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about the Saudis. I'm talking about the other parts of the Middle East. If they don't have their gas infrastructure working because it gets hit by the drone, Kuwait just yesterday, they had to shut down their gas plant. It's the end of the global economy.
I love when Matty thinks logically when he's analyzing a sociopath.
It's not about, you don't understand. He has no choice.
In
This
a perfect world,
he is
has plenty
completely
of choices.
trapped. He's completely
Shot
trapped.
people in the face in Minneapolis.
Completely
he has choices.
completely
he has
trapped.
choices, and you know what? He always makes the wrong ones.
Well,
Completely trapped.
it's interesting because you bring up an interesting point, Andy. Because, Matt, you're doing logic based on how things used to work. I'm not sure
It's
that
not.
it's
Here's the reason why.
I'm
Everything.
not sure that's accurate.
I'm arguing the price of oil, and if Iran is allowed to continue to bomb oil facilities and gas facilities, price per barrel will go up above $200 a barrel. Trump is not going to be able to tolerate the stock market collapsing. And that's what will happen when oil hits $250 or $200 a barrel. He can't leave until he either negotiates or resolves, which is why many people are terrified that he's going to use a tactical nuclear weapon, because it's the only way to end it immediately, which is horrific and wrong, but that's literally what's on the table.
The price of a barrel of oil right now is $109. A month ago, it was $72.
Sure.
You think he gives a shit?
He does give a shit. He's terrified.
That's not what he's
right
telling
now.
America.
That doesn't matter what he's saying. The reality is he's absolutely
Well, he's not.
in
He's
a
not
panic.
changing his actions.
Well, he is, because now he's threatening war crimes to actually destroy all the civilian infrastructure in Iran. And if he does that, what impetus would they have to surrender?
He's a coward. He's never going to do that. All right, let's talk about Blondie. I mean, Pam Bondi. And just for shits and giggles, because I can't get enough of this thing, let's play this clip again.
He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them ask Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over. The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Oh, boy.
Seriously, what does the Dow have to do with it? Like, I still to this day, like, that was the greatest, most comical non sequitur in the history of non sequiturs. She was asked about the Epstein files. Somehow we got the Dow at $50,000.
Even if we give her credit, we'll just say, okay, she misspoke. That it's kind of irrelevant to the insanity of bringing up the Dow when we're talking about it.
And she was like, and you know what? It's not even the Dow. It's the S&P and it's the NASDAQ.
Well, I mean,
she went through the whole fucking market, like every index. But she got shit canned yesterday. There's several reasons why people are speculating why she got fired. One was she didn't handle the Epstein files well. Well, What does that mean? Like, how did Donald Trump want the Epstein files handled? He wanted them taken in a truck to a garbage dump and burned. That's how he wanted them handled. She didn't prosecute his perceived enemies well enough. Well, there's this little thing in our judicial system called evidence, right? Mm-hmm. The saying goes, you can indict a ham sandwich, but you can't convict one without evidence. So this just, to me, begs the question of, like, the next Bondi, the next AG. What does that person say when it becomes clear from Donald Trump that he wants a more aggressive pursuit of his enemies? Does that person go, okay? Like,
Yes.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Yes,
they're
of
going to
course.
install a
Of
loyalist
course,
that's
of
even
course.
more
but then
aggressive.
how stupid? Now, I don't know if it's going to be Todd Blanche, who was the deputy AG, who's now the acting AG. I don't know if it's going to be Lee Zeldin, who still can't say Joe Biden
You heard
won.
the third possibility?
Janine Pirro.
There's a fourth possibility, too.
I've heard a bunch of names.
Haba,
Oh,
yeah.
right, of course.
I'm praying. If there's okay.
the parking ticket woman.
God, Jesus, if you're listening, God, Moses, Allah, whoever's up there listening, I say this as an atheist. Please make Alina Habba Attorney General.
I actually think she could be made acting, but I don't think the Senate would approve her. And seriously,
There's no rule. Senate? You're talking. There you go again, Matty.
I just don't think the Senate would approve her.
Are you talking civics again?
Well, the Senate is already
This is so
the
entertaining.
Senate has already disobeyed the president.
You're such a smart
They
guy.
passed-
You're like hung in the 80s.
They passed the Homeland Security
The
bill.
Senate
and they
won't
did it
approve
by
it.
voice vote.
Twice? Yes.
So they're already a little bit pissed at him, and Elena Hobbit wouldn't get through. That's my bet. But
All right,
Zell
well, bet
didn't
it now,
for
man.
sure, and so and I think
And Janine Pirro will get
Janine Pirro definitely.
Janine Pirro.
Yes.
I like my wine.
Another martini.
Well, you know,
Wine.
Yeah,
It's wine.
Zeldin and Janine Pirro, both graduates of this.
red wine, not white wine.
Both graduates of the same law school. I was just looking into that. They
Who?
both went to Albany Law School.
Here's the difference between you and me, Matty. I'm going to get in Trump's head right now. The ultimate fuck you
Yes.
is Alina Habba.
Why?
Because she got kicked out of the Jersey prosecutor's office.
Yes.
He wanted her to be the U.S. attorney for New Jersey. So he was pissed about that. Okay, what are you doing? You're pissed about somebody who can't be
Your point.
U.S.
is that-
attorney
Yeah,
in New
you make-
Jersey. You make her the fucking attorney general of the entire United States.
I don't think she's
That's what
actually.
my mind
I mean, I do think it's
I
funny
got my
that she
mind
could
on my
be.
money,
but
on my money, on my mind.
I think it'll be either Zeldin or Todd Blanche or Janine Pirro.
I don't think it's going to be Zeldin. I don't think it'll be Janine Pirro.
Well, then it
because
might
she
not be.
just had her own little Bondi-like episode a couple of weeks ago where she was pissed off at the ruling, went on a rant. No, I see Habba. Or the safe bet is just to leave Todd Blanche.
It is.
He's
It
kind of
is.
been running the show.
Well,
he's been in
yes.
charge of the Ghislaine Maxwell cover-up.
Yes.
He's done a great job at that.
Oh my God, it's just beyond that.
Yeah.
Him laughing in that interview makes me
Yeah,
vomit.
and what did he say yesterday or last night during an interview? All the Epstein files have been released.
yeah,
That's
all
it.
of them.
Case closed.
Case closed. It's like,
Nothing to see here.
Well, I mean, the one
You can't look at those
I mean,
3 million I still have because there's nothing left.
No, those don't count. I do think that he would definitely get approved by the Senate. I'd be surprised if he wasn't. Because I
Yes.
mean, he's actually, unlike anyone else in that list, he was actually worked in the Southern District as an assistant years ago, so he has some technical legal experience.
Well, and the other thing too is like people were angry and frustrated that Pam Bondi acted like Donald Trump's personal attorney. Well, Todd Blanche was actually Donald
personal-
Trump's
well-
personal attorney. So we I think may have gone from the frying pan into the fire
But-
on this one.
I mean, who could possibly replace her except for a more extreme loyalist? There are no choices.
Well, I'm going to talk about that in my rant.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I've got suggestions
All
for
right.
Mr. Sociopath. All right, let's get to our winners and losers.
My winner, Army Chief of Staff General Randy George, who was fired yesterday for refusing to remove 4 officers, 2 women and 2 black men, from a promotion list at Hegseth's insistence. My loser, Donald Trump for starting the war in Iran without a strategy, has no exit plan, killing countless innocent people, wreaking havoc on the global economy, and using it as an excuse not to fund U.S. domestic programs like daycare and Medicaid.
I'm going to agree with your winner and just go straight to my loser, Pam Bondi, who only managed to be in 422 days as opposed to Jeff Sessions, who made it 636 days. So she is the shortest attorney general in Trump's history in terms of one who was Senate approved.
My winner, Democrats, who were handed a midterms campaign gift with Trump saying, quote, "We can't take care of daycare. We're fighting wars. It's not possible for us to take care of daycare, Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things." Thanks, Donnie. My loser, Lindsey Graham, who after being humiliatingly photographed at Disney holding a pink bubble wand, then felt the need to post a lame pic the next day of him out shooting a shotgun with the comment, "Spent some time breaking clays in Edgefield County today. Doesn't get much better than that." Girl, stay in your lane. I just love going to Disney. Seeing all them princesses in their pretty little dresses. Ay, Gavolt. It's twice
And princes.
I said, "Ay, Gavolt."
And princes.
Prince.
Prince Charming.
Oh, especially the princes. I'm going straight to hell. All right, that gets us to the weekly rant. So Pam Bondi has been fired, and as I said before, she needs to be replaced. So here's my open letter to Donald Trump. Dear Sir, in the wake of your predictable firing yesterday of Attorney General Pam Bondi, may I make a suggestion to you? Perhaps, maybe now try to hire someone competent. Someone who not only understands the rule of law, but will honor his or her oath to uphold it. Someone who is loyal to the Constitution and the American people, not to you. Someone with backbone, integrity, duty, honor, patriotism. Someone who will focus on real crime and real criminals and not waste a ton of time and taxpayer money on selective, retributive prosecutions of whoever you happen to deem your enemies at any given moment, based purely on whim, ego, and or personal animus. And sir, here's the other thing about targeting your opponents. The courts hate that. Grand juries and judges don't like seeing our judicial system assaulted this way. So you're not even winning on that front. Just ask Tish James how it's going. Look, I know you whined for decades that I want my Roy Cohn. Well, you got one. You couldn't get a more fiercely passionate, loyal, sycophantic defender than Pam Bondi, even if you were screwing her. Were you? In fact, at her last congressional hearing, she actually sounded more like your girlfriend than your attorney general. And she hung a giant banner of your face on the Justice Department building. She was a better Roy Cohn than Roy Cohn could ever be. But even so, look how it worked out with Pam. What a disaster that was. Same with Alina Habba, Lindsay Halligan, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell, Kenneth Chesbrough, Jeffrey Clark, and all the other corrupt and or ethically bankrupt attorneys who twisted their law licenses into a pretzel for you. And what does that teach you, sir? Well, it should be a lesson that no matter how loyal someone is to you, no matter how much people prostrate themselves in servitude, no matter how much they skirt or violate the law for you and treat you like the king you masturbate thinking about, it's never enough. Oh, don't get me wrong. It's always enough for you. But it's not for the American people. And remember, sir, it is we the people who own this country, who own the White House, who own the Oval Office and the Resolute Desk, and everything else about your presidency. You own nothing. We own everything. And we own you. You work for us. Same as the Attorney General. And we don't play that shit. So you can keep putting in place people like Kristi Noem and Bondi and the other incompetent losers who you will inevitably throw under the bus sooner than later. including Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, Howard Lutnick, Pete Hegseth, and Bobby Kennedy Jr. You'll surely fire them all because you know you can't stand them. Because the one thing we know about bullies and dictator wannabes is that while they love having their asses kissed, they're repulsed by those who do it, especially when they get even more negative headlines than you do. So in closing, just do your job. Don't break the law, and you won't need your Roy Cohn. But we all know that's not possible, sir. Now is it? All right, let's get to Shawn Harris. He spent 40 years in the military and retired as an Army Brigadier General. He and his wife Karla have 5 children and 4 grandchildren. They live in Rockmart, Georgia, where together they run their first-generation grass-fed cattle farm. And he's running for Congress in Georgia's 14th district, the seat vacated by Marjorie Taylor Greene. Shawn, welcome into the back room.
And it's so great to be on your show, man. Looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Same here. So let's start off with some context. You're a Democrat running in one of the reddest districts in the country, Georgia's 14th. You and Republican Clay Fuller took the top 2 spots in last month's special election. And next week, you head into a runoff to fulfill the remainder of Marjorie Taylor Greene's term, which expires in January. And if that wasn't enough, you'll then have to start immediately campaigning to win your full term in the November midterms. So you ran before and you lost. So I've got to ask, what made you say this time it's winnable?
Yeah, you know, the reality of it is the first time I ran against Marjorie, I was fresh out of the military. I was still very rigid. Spending time in the Middle East, you don't have a whole bunch of people coming around you and want to take selfies all the time. So it took some time for me to get used to that type of environment. So now, after 3 years of being out of the military, the people here in Northwest Georgia actually know me. They trust me. They see me now as a cattle farmer. And we learned a lot of things when we ran against Marjorie. And then now, I'm not running against Marjorie, and that completely changes everything. The reality of it is the Shawn Harris name, the Leadership Matters brand, is actually bigger than any of the Republicans I ran against here in this jungle election thing that we did. And now we're running against Clay. Clay is endorsed by President Trump, but the reality of it is he really didn't get a bump, and he's still running against, I think, 6 other Republicans in a primary that's going on as we going through this runoff as we speak.
And what's also significant and what's changed significantly in the last year is that someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene went from being one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters and enablers to one of his archest enemies. And the whole MAGA landscape has changed dramatically, as well as where Donald Trump's popularity has been. So it would seem to a casual observer, especially someone like me up in New York, that the landscape is pretty darn fertile down there for you.
Yeah, you know, we a lot has changed, but we also still got to work very hard to get everybody out. And the reality for me to win, I have to make sure that we're motivating Democrats to come out. We pull 60 to 70% of our independents, which that's going to be no problem. We might even go as high as 90% this time. And then we also have to appeal to 20% of the Republicans. And those 20% of Republicans are actually Republicans that when they vote for me, they would not turn into Democrats. But they're actually saying, look, Shawn, the current Republican Party has left me behind, and I want to give somebody else a chance. So that's how we're building this coalition, and that's how we're going to win this election here. Not only this time, but again, like you said, in November, I got to turn right back around and do it again.
Yeah, you just said something which I think is so critical, and it's important to repeat it in a sense, because it is a message that should resonate with Republicans across the country, and that is voting Democrat doesn't make you a Democrat. It just means you're fed up with what's happening in Washington right now and or what's happening in your own district, and you want change. It doesn't fundamentally change who you are. You can vote red, in the next election if there's a candidate that appeals to you that way. But that's a really important point and I think that's something that we all have to get back to in this country, is that everything is not red or blue. It's
Right.
American. And
Right.
we all go shopping. We all buy health insurance. We all fill up our car with gas. We're all dealing with the same challenges. And I think voters are ready for someone who can come along and talk to them in a nonpartisan way and just speak to the kitchen table issues that they're struggling with.
Yeah, what makes me really different from the typical Democrat that's out there is I would not be talking to you today, period, if it was not for Republicans that actually came here to my farm, helped me put up a fence, fellow veterans, and they actually said, "Hey, Shawn, we looked at your bio, we love it, we think you have it, and we want you to run against Marjorie Taylor Greene in the primary." And when they said the word primary, that's when it hit me, I think these guys actually believe that I'm a Republican. And I had to tell them right out there in the pasture in front of my house, I had to say, "Hey, guys, I know in the military we don't talk this political stuff, but I got to let you know I'm a Democrat." And then I said, "But I'm a moderate Democrat." They took less than a minute and turned back around and said, "Okay, we still want to support you because we believe you got what it is, and we know that you can bring home results." Because Marjorie hadn't did anything for the Republican Party or for the people here. And that's how we got started. And then after that, I made a phone call to the Democratic Party, and here we are today. So what I say to everybody across the nation is, if you're going to run in these ruby red districts, you got to find a candidate that can actually speak to both sides. And can be true to who they are, because at the end of the day, when you get into this business, you may have some people try to make you into something else. And if you turn yourself into something else, then you have no idea what you're talking about. What makes it so easy for me is because the person that's talking to you is the real Shawn. Regardless if we're talking on your podcast or if we're just sitting on the front porch talking, my talking points don't change because they're true to me.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting what you just said, because you do have quite an impressive background. You are a cattle farmer. You spent 40 years in the military as a Marine, as an infantry commander in Afghanistan, and a retired Brigadier General in the Army National Guard, which, of course, to Donald Trump and the Republican Party and your opponent and their supporters, they're going to obviously brand you a radical leftist lunatic, which is
Yes, that's a commercial a commercial that's happening right now. And every time I look at it, I just start laughing because I'm saying, wow, that's the best you could do?
Yeah. Well, in all seriousness, how does that stellar background, that patriotic background, shape the kind of Democrat you are and the campaign you're running?
Yeah, all my adult life has been focused on the American people and standing up and doing the right thing for the American people. And then because we had 20 years of fighting, deploying and doing things that we don't talk about with other great American veterans that are out there. With that being said, I am, when people look at my background, I try to bring all of those different experiences to the table. One of the things I was in the military was obviously infantry, but later on in my career, I became an attaché. I became a person that would go into the meetings with some people we probably disagreed with 100%, and become the voice of how can we compromise? How can we get the peace from a military point of view? And from that, I'm bringing that skill set to Washington, D.C. to say, I don't have to agree with anybody on anything. However, I think it's one or 2 points that we can find as Democrats and Republicans that we all agree upon. Like you just said, we all paying very high gas prices at the pump. We're all having major problems when it comes to the cost of living. And when we talk about that, I think the Republican that's in a rural area like me, that has majority of farmers that are struggling, will probably say, you know what, Shawn, we got a couple things in agreement. Let's write a bipartisan bill together and see can we push it through to take care of the rural community. And I think that's what you're going to see when I get to D.C. in November, is I'm going to be able to be very productive because I know how to reach across the aisle. But the other thing is going to make me very productive is that whoever's in charge of the House will always have to come and talk to me. That makes the people in our district very important, because if Donald Trump is doing something right and it makes sense, I'm going to vote for it. And for my district. But if he's doing something that's dumb and is not going to help our district, I'm going to be able to push back. My opponent, Clay, because he sold his soul to Donald Trump, he can't push back on anything. With this war that we currently in, he says we're doing all the right things, and it blows my mind because Clay is also a veteran and he's also deployed. So he knows that we could actually get into a forever war based on some lies, because I have to believe that he keeps up with history. So we should be doing the right thing for the next set of veterans going to be coming through.
So when you're out there walking around, meeting with and talking with Georgians, what are they telling you specifically? What are the top 2 or 3 issues that they bring up to you that are important to them? And are they different from what we hear from voters nationally?
Yeah. The top 2 are the same thing you hear nationally. Cost of living is killing us across the board, but our cost of living may be a little bit different from everybody else. Our cost of living is just like everybody else, trying to figure out how you're going to pay for gas, get some milk in your break, get some milk from the grocery store for your family. But because our number one industry in Georgia, but the number one industry here in our district is agriculture, diesel fuel and fertilizer prices are also killing us, because this is the time that we're supposed to be planting our crops or whatever we're doing from a point of agriculture. So that's one. Number 2 is access to health care and then also insurance. They kind of package those 2 together. One, they're concerned about the ACA now because it's starting to affect where a lot of people don't have insurance anymore, or the insurance rate is so high. But then our hospitals, we have the facilities, but we don't actually have the doctors, nurses, and specialists. So if you get really injured or real sick, they'll take you to one of our smaller hospitals, but then ultimately you got to go to Atlanta or Chattanooga, Tennessee. They say to me, Shawn, help us live in a place that we're not living in a healthcare desert. And then the third piece that's starting to bubble up now, and is very unique to Northwest Georgia, from Dalton, Georgia to Rome, Georgia, all the way down to the Gulf. We're in that band where PFAS is everywhere. So it is affecting everybody across the board with their farms, but also our cancer rate is very high. And at this point, we still hadn't held anybody accountable. We don't have any solutions to fix the problem. So that PFAS issue is something that they have said to me, thank you, Shawn, for mentioning it when you was running against Marjorie Taylor Greene. But we also want you to be a champion when you go to D.C. to bring in some funding to help us address this issue. And at the same time, getting behind who are we going to hold accountable for this. So that's what makes us very unique here in Northwest Georgia.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I'll put you on the spot a little bit. What do you think her biggest impact has been on the district, positive and or negative?
Yeah, I think 2 things, and I'll let the audience say if they're positive or negative. Marjorie Taylor Greene is bigger than life, still today, period. The question is, how does she want to use that bigger than life? We all know how she used it in the very beginning. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene has turned into Marjorie Taylor Greene. I call it 2.0. I'm not going to say that she's changed her stripes. It's just what comes out of her mouth now sounds like something that maybe Democrats want to hear, where she talks about health care, she talks about insurance, she talks about the cost of living, she talks about the Epstein files, she talks about this war of choice. What I say to people is this: Marjorie Taylor Greene 2.0 did nothing more than actually move into the talking points of Shawn Harris, the moderate Democrat. That is all she did, because me and her have always, when we ran against each other, we both agreed on the Epstein files needed to be released. It's just when she talked to her son or daughter that turned 26 and they realized they weren't going to be able to cover the insurance anymore, that's when she read the big beautiful bill and realized that it did not cover her kids like she thought it was going to be. Then she said it turned impersonal. So I say that to say all of this. Marjorie still has a big grip on this district. Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene are in the middle of I call it a major divorce. And with that being said, our district, for the Republican side, has not, some are supporting Trump, some are supporting Marjorie, the question is going to play out in this election is how does that play into the election? And right now, if you notice, Marjorie Taylor Greene, as of today, has not came up on the net and endorsed my opponent at all, even though he has the endorsement from the president. And I believe people watching that here in the district, and some of those people probably going to stay at home because they're saying, no, this Clay is going to do nothing more than go to D.C. and do anything that Donald Trump says to do. And Marjorie Taylor Greene has already told them that that's not good. And as you know, today as we speak, Donald Trump is in the process of damn near firing everybody that's on his staff.
Yeah. Well, let's stick with this for a second because this is really interesting because politics today is a little crazy and it has been for several years now. We saw in 2024 someone like Liz Cheney campaign with Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Do you envision a scenario ultimately where Marjorie Taylor Greene would not only endorse you but campaign with you? Would you want that?
Personally, I would not seek that because there's still a lot of things that Marjorie and I truly disagree on greatly. However,
similarly to with Cheney and Kamala Harris, of course.
Correct, 100%. But I think our relationship is a little bit still too raw. I'll just say it that way. Because we had a nice little battle. And people in the district clearly remember that. But what I will say, if Donald Trump decides in the next day or so to put troops on the ground in Iran, and Donald Trump continues to run this economy of ours in the ground and people are hurting, I would not be surprised that after I win this time, go to D.C. and bring back results, and people see that, wait a minute, this moderate Democrat is actually bringing back results for everybody in the district. I could see Marjorie Taylor Greene, if she is a person that's on The View, or if she's a person that you see on CNN all the time, I could see her saying something very positive about Shawn Harris. May not be an endorsement, but I could see her saying, you know what, Shawn Harris is the right person at the right time for Northwest Georgia, but we got to find a Republican to replace him. I could see her saying something like that, and that'll be the closest to an endorsement that you would see.
Well, look, she is a lightning rod, and she has elevated the district's voice nationally, and this would certainly be another opportunity for her to be an agent of change if that's the route she wanted to go. When you get to Congress, what's the first thing you would do differently? And is there specific legislation that you would seek to sponsor or co-sponsor?
Yeah, the first thing I got to do when I get to Congress, and that's going to be on the 8th, we flying up there, we're going to raise our hand and make sure the Speaker of the House is going to swear us in so we can go to work. But the entire time Marjorie was in our district, she never actually had any offices that were open to the public so they can come and ask for help. So what you're going to see first, 3 offices will open in our district. One will be in Dalton, Georgia, one will be in Rome, Georgia, and one will be in West Cobb. Inside of those offices where everybody can come and we'll help them solve their issues, but each one of those offices will have a second office in it that focuses on our 40,000 veterans and their spouses, because many of our veterans are still trying to get the benefits that they have already earned. So I've told the entire district that's going to be the first thing that I do. The second thing you'll see me do on that first day, because I believe in anything you do is all about relationships. In that first 1 or 2 days, I plan to try to have meetings with everybody, Democrats and Republicans, so that I know them personally, so that I can say in that first initial meeting, I know in a lot of things we may not agree upon, but because Representative X from rural community that looks just like Northwest Georgia, I see and read where you said you got a problem with hospitals potentially closing based on the big, beautiful bill. What can we do together? And from those first initial meetings, we will start the relationship building so that we can actually bring in results. So those will be the first 2 things I did on day 1. And then I've actually said to other leaders that are already in D.C., when I get there, I will review everything that's going through. And if it makes sense for Georgia, I'll make sure I add my name to it to help bring it here to Northwest Georgia. Because many times, Marjorie, when she was there, Georgia would vote a certain way, even Republicans. But Marjorie would vote against that, and we'll be left out of reaping some of those benefits. So I want to make sure that my focus is the people here in Northwest Georgia and making sure I can bring home those results.
We talked a little bit about your background before. You know, we live in an era today where we have, as a Secretary of Defense, some Rambo cosplayer who's off half-cocked doing all kinds of damage. We have a 5 deferment, bone spurs inflicted, draft-dodging coward in the White House who is trying to overcompensate for a lifetime of cowardice. He had an opportunity to go to Vietnam and he didn't. You're the real deal, 40 years. And how important do you think that kind of military record is important, not just in your race, but these days, the way we need to look at our candidates?
Yeah, I think we have excellent candidates out there with outstanding potential. But I have been speaking to a lot of veterans across the nation and saying, you know, perhaps doing it at the federal level is not your thing, but we need tested leaders that understand pressure, understand how to stand on your own 2 feet when it gets a little tough and be able to tell why you did some of what your decision was. We need those individuals to stand up and run for office, from local to state to federal. And what I see based on my service, it'll be individuals that are in DC that will look at my bio and say, you know what, Shawn was in Afghanistan, or Shawn was in Liberia, and Shawn was in Kosovo, and Shawn was here. That somebody will say, you know what, that guy and I, we got something in common. We can agree on some things. The other thing I would say to you is this. My bio, people say, yeah, Shawn, you're an American hero. But when I look at my bio is not much different from everybody else's. The only thing that makes it a little different is because I used to be Private Shawn Harris in the United States Marine Corps. And then I got a chance to go up to E5, go off to college at Tuskegee, and then become a second lieutenant and work my way all the way up to Brigadier General. Only reason I say that is my leadership strategy has always looked through the lens, how does these decisions affect the least of us, the lowest ranking people in the chain? Again, I think about that when I'm in DC or even here in the district now. What policies that we're putting together, how does it affect the least of the people in our district? Because right now, the big, beautiful bill, the president talks about everybody's getting big time returns. Guess what? You in the upper middle class of our society, if you getting a big return, if you just barely making it like most people in our district, you're saying, what happened to my return? And if you got a return, the time that you was driving to go pick up your check, you had to put diesel or gas in your car and you spend it all up right then and there. So I just want to make sure that my leadership encourage others to run, but at the same time, my leadership says to somebody, you can get in this game of politics and you can change it for the better. You don't always have to be nasty, but you have to be able to get in this game to actually change it.
Mm-hmm. The race next week is being watched nationally as a bellwether for the midterms.
Yeah.
Do you feel a lot of pressure over that, or are you just trying to keep it hyper-local?
No. I to be honest with you, I maybe I'm a little different. I never feel pressure. Never. And I say that is because everything that's actually happening here in this district right now is everything that we planned. Nothing is by chance. We put in the hard work. We put in the systems. Yes, we have help from our state national Democrats. We have help from all of our counties. We have help from our volunteers. We have help coming from everywhere. But this is the plan that we put together. We just have to follow our plan. Prime example, yesterday was the last day of early voting. Today is Good Friday. What we're doing today is making sure that we know everybody who actually went and voted so that come on Tuesday, we can get in our cars, and actually go pick people up and get them to the polls. Because some people in this district will say, Shawn, man, I want to vote for you, but gas costs too much for me to drive down there. I only got enough gas for the week. Things are not meeting up. So we putting plans together right now to say, how do we get people to the polls on Tuesday? Because this election is a turnout election, because we're in the middle of the Holy Week. Today is Good Friday. We normally would have 5 days of early voting. We only had 4. And then Tuesday, right now as we speak, if you would go up to Atlanta, there's a whole bunch of people getting on the plane going on spring break. So we had to have a strategy that says, please, before you go on spring break, go vote. And then the ones that are going to be here next week, we got to make sure we get them to the polls. And so that's what we're going to do. We're excited. I know the whole world is watching, not just the United States, because a lot of people came to my farm. When I say a lot of people, a lot of different countries, France, Italy's been here, Australia's been here. The reason why these people coming here is because they're concerned from an international point of view is Donald Trump is talking about getting out of NATO. They know that I served as a chief of staff of NATO in Kosovo. So they keeping an eye on it, saying, they don't get a chance to vote, but it'd be great if a soldier gets to DC that understands NATO, understand the relationship, and have the gumption to push back on these type things. So this election is not only big for Northwest Georgia, not only big for Georgia, not only big for the United States, but this is also big for our international friends and partners around the world, especially because we in a war in Iran right now.
So my last question, and we sort of touched on this a little bit before, but I want to bring it back and close out with it because I think it's probably the most important thing we could talk about. And that is, you talk a lot about Team Georgia. We are in a hyper-partisan climate in this country right now. What is your message to that person in Georgia 14 who their entire lives voted Republican, aren't happy with Trump, aren't happy with the Republican Party, but have that push and pull because like they've never voted blue? What do you say to them to get them to the polls for you?
That's a conversation I have every day. Normally that conversation happens at Tractor Supply, or people just call me on my phone because more than 7,000 people in the district got my direct number. I'm a little different. But that conversation goes like this. In this situation, if you decide to vote for me, you're not going to turn into a Democrat. Only thing I'm saying to you, look through the lens of your children and your grandchildren and say to yourself, which one of these individuals is going to give your kids and your grandkids the best shot? And if that is Shawn Harris, vote for me now. Hold me accountable between now and November. If I don't actually bring the results, then you can vote for me again in November and fire me. But if I bring the results, vote for me again, and I will go back and work. But the other thing I tell them is this. I believe in term limits. I do not want to be an old man in Washington, D.C. I only going to D.C. for 6 years. That's term limits for being a representative. And then I'm coming back home and just going to stay here on my farm. And actually, I told my wife that's when I'm really going to retire. So that is what I actually say to everybody, but specifically to Republicans, is that, look, test drive the car. Test drive it. If it turns out that it's what you need and it's going to work out well, keep it. But if it don't, we got an off-ramp called November that you can vote me right back out and go back what you were used to. But what you've been used to, if you really look in the mirror, has not brought you anything. Nothing but a whole bunch of noise, a whole bunch of chaos, and a whole bunch of nothing. So that's the message. And usually when I have that conversation, this past week, people called me as they were about to go into the polls and ask the question. And when I say people, I'm talking about Republicans. And based off what I just said there, they said, you know what, Shawn? I am going to give you that chance because I'm voting for my kids and grandkids. And I'm confident that on Tuesday, we won't be standing around there too long. They're going to call this thing pretty quick. And everybody else is going to be celebrating. You're going to see me saying, you know what? Thank you. But now I got to get to Atlanta, get on the plane and get to DC and start going to work for the people here in Northwest Georgia. Because I plan to be there at 9 o'clock on the 8th, that morning, standing in Congress, saying, Speaker of the House, you need to come on over here and let me swear in again, something I've done many, many times in the military.
And if folks want to learn more about you and support the campaign before then, where do they go?
Yeah, just go to my campaign page. That's ShawnForGeorgia.com. And just check us out. Everything that I stand for is already on the webpage. If you want to donate, please donate. Obviously, we still need money to make this thing happen. But on top of that, I ask people to volunteer, people to sign up, to make phone calls, because we're doing all of those things between now and Tuesday. The cool thing today, we have some people flying in from Oregon. I think it's 8 or 9 of them flying in from Oregon, and they're going to be knocking on doors for me all this weekend throughout the district. So that says that it's not just Northwest Georgia that's working on this. It's not just Georgia that's working on this. It is a coalition of people all around this country that's trying to help me get promoted. And I just want to tell them thank you. I want to tell people all the time, keep me in your prayers, because you didn't ask me what I'll tell you. We have had some threats. That's another thing that Marjorie Taylor Greene and I have in common. And on occasion, if I'm going to a particular place and if the public knows that, I have to put on a bulletproof vest to go there. But what I've said to people in our district, and I said to people around the world, is this: is courage is contagious. Nobody's going to scare us to stop going out and making our voice heard. And that's why people are going to the polls right now, because they want to make sure their voice is heard and continue to fight so that we can get somebody in D.C. who's going to fight for them.
Well, good luck Tuesday. We'll be rooting for you.
Thank you very much. Have a
All
good
right.
one.
You too. Take care, Shawn.
Thank you.
This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhiniecliff, with additional editing by Matty Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Lengyel. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.